to his or her children, or her child or his child. But unfortunately, it is not happening, and maybe this is the reason as to why we are here to speak about this particular issue. Yes.
Well, you hinted on something to do with companies. I've realized with a lot of concern as a parent that so many companies are advertising so many things, including the sugar sweetened beverages in schools. And these are things that actually World Health Organization has declared something called aspartame in these sugar sweetened beverages as carcinogenic. And so when you talk about the foods in our schools that children are consuming and the unregulation, I think it's a big issue. Would you love to highlight more about the advertising, the sugar sweetened beverages? Take us through that.
Thank you so much. Many children like sugar, and I think also adults. Even when you tell them stop drinking sugar, even adults, many people, they find it extremely difficult because it is sweet, and maybe people want sweet things. Of course, sugar is not entirely bad for our health. We need sugar because even the food we eat also has sugar in it. You eat cassava, but the body, gets sugar out of it. But what is happening is processed foods. You find that there is too much sugar. The problem is in excess. You find that children, it can surprise you that a parent of a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old in kindergartens, they take them to schools from their homes. Instead of preparing some meals or some natural juice, they don't do that. They stop by a supermarket, they'll buy all sorts of snacks, all sorts of sodas, and then they pack for a child of below 3, below 4, below 5. And these products are dangerous to children. So this is what we are telling parents. All products, non-alcoholic beverages, sugar sweetened beverages, all products that have high content or excess sugar, excess fat, excess salt, because much of what you are giving to your children or what you allow companies to advertise to your children has excess sugar, excess fat, excess salt. So the danger is that many children have the capacity to buy. Why? They have money from parents, they have money from guardians, they have money from friends maybe, or some have worked maybe during holiday and they have money. So the companies that sell these unhealthy products know that children have money and they'll target them. That is number one. Then number two, there is what we call pester power. Children have that power. They call it pester power or kid influence. Have you seen when you are walking with a child and maybe there is a hawker or they have toys? So what they'll do, they'll come near the child. Definitely when the child sees what they like, they'll pester. You understand? This is what they call...
That's true, actually.
Yes, pester power. So because of the pester power, these companies know that you don't go to the parents, you go to the child. This is why you'll have adverts, you'll have billboards, you'll have all sorts of advertisement to children, because they know a child, and because we are parents, many times we want our children to feel good, our children to love us, or naturally we feel that connection with our children. So we find ourselves sliding into doing wrong things. For example, a child will just mention something. This is what I want, so a parent will buy. So number three, companies know that when you learn something as a child, it is extremely difficult for you to leave that thing when you grow up.
Yeah.
So
true.
they will hook children into unhealthy eating behaviors. Because some of the products that have excess sugar or salt or fat, because of this fat being processed fat, because much of it is trans fatty acids.
Yeah.
You've talked about aspartame. You've talked about there are other sodium glutamate into these foods, which are dangerous, and by the way, they are carcinogenic and they are causing cancer to your children. So what happens is they target children, and before you know it, they have components that are addictive. A child will get addicted, and then before you know it, a child gets addicted, they become obese because all these critical nutrients are in excess amounts. Then they just eat because they are children. Do you know that in some of those products, they could be sodas, they could be crisps, they could be maybe they could be milk, but milk that is flavored. They could be, so all these have, some of them have in them some nutrients which knock the brain. So a child will eat, and that element in a human being that tells them that, you see, you have reached the level of satiety. It doesn't happen. So they manipulate the child's brain to continue eating and eating and eating. Yes.
Mr. Kawanda, these eating behaviors that we are talking about contribute to 10% of all cancers in children in Uganda. Correct?
No, not contributing 10%. The statistics we have from the Cancer Institute are like the trend of cancer, new cancer cases in children is rising at a rate of 10%.
Terrible.
Yes.
Now, between the government, parents and schools, who is responsible? Because a rate of 10% is too high for the young generation.
Okay.
Who is to be held accountable?
And actually, beyond the 10%, which the cancer, the new cases, we also have statistics from Ministry of Health showing that 33% of the children in Uganda in school are obese. Meaning that obesity will at one time catch up with these children, malnutrition and everything. Then we also have a double burden of malnutrition. So, at some point is overnutrition, at some point is malnutrition. So, who is responsible? Of course, parents. The primary responsibility is with the parents. But not everyone has a parent. But not every parent knows specifically what to do. This is why under the Children's Act, beyond the parent, if this child is in your school, the responsibility is also on you as a school management. So you cannot run away from the responsibility of children's right to education, children's right to health, and children's right to food. Yes, the parent is primarily responsible if the child has a parent, but the school is equally responsible because under the Education Act, you have legal obligations as the school management, whether primary, whether kindergarten, whether secondary. Then the government also has responsibilities because we know schools may not know, they may not have nutritionists. Actually, many of the things that we are talking about are not in many of the schools, leaders are not in the know. Some of what we are talking about is technical scientific stuff that the government, the central government with the local government need to prevail over and regulate school food or diet environments. So yes, the parent is responsible, the government is responsible, school management is responsible, and local government is responsible.
Before we go to the way forward, because our time is fast spent,
Yeah.
to understand maybe on all these parties what should be done and whatever, I first want to pick your mind on what would you think would be the best approach to feeding in schools? What would be the alternative to all these inappropriate feeding behaviors in our schools?
The government of Uganda needs to work with local governments and with schools. We need to have local supply. You understand? There is no reason why a school in, for example, in Kampala here, procures food from Tanzania. You understand? A school is in Masaka, but they procure food from Kampala.
But of course, Mr. Kabanda, they will tell you that the East African integration, first of all, you saw the president's comment on banning Tanzanian rice, for example, and said we cannot stop this because they will also stop our products. So everybody, I mean, this is a free market economy.
Yeah, it is a free market economy.
Isn't that just quite hard to implement?
It's not hard.
Aren't you asking for too much?
No, I'm not asking for too much. You see, you cannot leave issues of public health, you know, to the whims of a free market economy. For example, when we had COVID-19 here, weren't we ordered to go into our homes? Would we just say, but this is a free market economy, I need to trade, let me open up? You understand? When issues of public health come into play, you cannot afford to allow your future generation wasted away because a company X is selling. Some of the aspects must be regulated.
Doesn't this affect the tax base, you think?
It is not. In any case, it might be actually affecting it in the positive way. Every single $1 you invest in nutrition, you get 5 in return. So if I invest in the nutrition of the children, do you know Uganda itself has statistics that 54% of Ugandans suffered malnutrition when they were young. Adults. And they cannot now optimally serve themselves and the nation. So we lose a lot of money if the cognitive capacity of children is not well developed. The people who will grow up to bring up wonderful innovation, good concepts, science, we are losing that because the children are either not feeding at all, or when they feed, they are not feeding well, or the companies have been allowed to deal with the children the way they want, and they understand what they are doing. If someone is manufacturing a product which has a capacity to manipulate your brain, that you have not reached the level of satiety, that needs to be put in check.
You see what you're talking about, Mr. Kabanda, is a long-term thing that 54% probably are not functioning in the most or best way simply because they were malnourished while young.
Yeah.
Today, Musimbi Ekam, I'm an investor, I'm manufacturing something that probably has a negative effect on the brain of a juvenile. But then, I'm paying a lot of taxes to this government. It's looking at now. Okay? We need to host a summit of IGAD, we need to build roads, and then you're talking about something of the future. Do you think there are such people anticipating what you're talking about? That's why I asked her, aren't you asking for too much? Do you think there are such people in government thinking, okay, if we let this product come, we shall not have a future generation? Or we have actually people thinking that if we don't get taxes from Musimbi's company, a road will not be constructed, drugs will not be in hospital today.
That is very erroneous, and we have been in circles of government, including in parliament. Some such arguments also come up, but we also know that it is the industry that brings in all those. If I've told you that if you do not invest in the children's health, you are losing $4 $4. Every single dollar you do not invest, you are losing $4. And it is not in the wrong land. Because if I'm telling you that children must be eating from the local community, let the local community, let me give you an example. Isn't the government of Uganda implementing PDM?
Yes, it is.
If those business enterprises are, and many of them are in agriculture, many of them are into agri-food actually. Agri-food, poultry, fish, what? So where are they going to sell? Why don't you connect them to schools and they sell to schools? Why don't you restrict, unhealthy products? Because we are talking about unhealthy. If the product is healthy, I think that should be fine for open, and free market. But where we are, I think we need to come back to government and we call them to order to manage the school environments, to manage the procurements, to make sure that no company selling sugar sweetened beverages that have excess nutrients, these critical nutrients, and we are only talking about excess fat, excess salt, excess sugar.
Mr. Kabanda, some of the people in government that you're talking about actually have shares or own these companies. Besides that, proprietors of such companies are very powerful people in this country, that they can maneuver through the systems from the grassroots to the top. Now, the third issue is many of these you'll find that somebody owns company X dealing in sugar sweetened beverages and the unhealthy foods that we are talking about. The same person owns a school. Don't you think you're flogging a dead horse to think that this will see the light of the day?
No. Maybe we wouldn't even be discussing this, but we are discussing this on the background that we well know that these are big people. Nobody will have a big company that is producing sugar sweetened beverages if it's not a big person. It's big people connected, people who have a lot of influence. But let me tell you, why we are speaking to the people, we are creating awareness. You understand? One person or company or 2-3 companies cannot win the majority 40 million Ugandans. You understand? So it is important for people to know, because many people do not actually know that some of these products have these critical nutrients in excess. Someone just drinks a soda, someone just drinks and they don't know what is in there. So it is our responsibility to let Ugandans know that some of these products are going to push you in your grave too early. Some of these products like sugar, some of these products like those crisps that you eat, some of these products that you don't censure are going to cause misery in your homes. Your children are going to become obese. Your children are, do you know that many parents are now buying supplements for their children's memory, for their children's attention in school? How do you expect a child to be attentive in school when they fed on a soda in the morning? You are lying to yourself. So if you are talking about a generation, a legacy that we should leave behind us as parents, we need to take particular attention on what our children are feeding on. If you go to a school and they do not have a health school canteen policy, that shouldn't be your school. If you go to a school and your children are only feeding on posho from when they enter school 90 days to when they come back to your home, that's not your school. So I think parents also need to be very serious and keen about the schools where they are taking their children. The local governments must put in place bylaws that are restricting marketing to the children, but also Parliament and the government, the central government, must make sure that we are not saying that companies must not advertise. They should. But if it is children, these children do not have the commercial intent knowledge yet. They are innocent. We shouldn't kill innocents.
Well, you give very good submissions on what you think should be done. You also go ahead to advise parents on the schools they should choose. But take an instance for a parent, like my producer here maybe has a child but is incapacitated to afford a school that will ably feed their child adequately, not even ably. Because what the school can afford is maybe portion beans for 90 days. That's why I'm thinking, don't you think all these things are good boardroom discussions, but actually hard to implement?
Not at all. Where we started from, the responsibility of raising a child in Uganda is not only parent. We have the schools, we have the local governments, we have the central government. And I have given you solutions. If we want balanced diets for our children must not be constrained to only eat posho, and it also has metal in it and everything. if the procurement is done in communities, there's too much food in communities. There are fruits, there are everything.
Mr. Kabanda, you're talking about communities. I think it's about 10% of millers in Uganda that are food grade. And these are statistics from the Uganda National Bureau of Standards, a national standards body. Now, if the national standards body is saying that, yes, we have good food in communities, but then this could be food that has not been organically or agroecologically grown. It's sprayed, it's already contaminated. Now they are taking it to a milling machine that's not food grade. It's milled, but it has metal in it. So already it's bought within the community, but the chemicals already contaminated it. Then add on the milling with metal. Don't you think it's still suicidal? Like the Chinese is so worse that it is almost next to impossible to achieve whatever we are discussing?
No. If you come to like our organization, the Center for Food and Adequate Living Rights, we are promoting a food systems approach from pre-production to when the food is eaten, from farm to fork. Yes, we have challenges, but we haven't reached a level of a no return. You understand? It can still be done, and we can have whole foods from the communities. It is true, very true, that some of the farmers use chemicals in growing food, but not every farmer. You understand? And if farmers have, for example, security, and maybe you have entered into an arrangement as a school, and by the way, districts can do it, especially the rural districts, and say, okay, how many schools do we have? How many business enterprises in the PDM do we have? So this enterprise, can you supply this school this amount of food? Potatoes, cassava, matoke, yams, mention it. The communities, groups that have been already organized under PDM can supply schools with enough food. Children must not be eating the metal contaminated posho from these unregulated millers.
As to whether, like Mr. Kawanda says, the food will be enough or not enough, it's a discussion that we can discuss, because many of these projects of PDM are also a bit struggling in ensuring that everything meets the standard. Well, thank you so much for making time, Mr. Kabanda, to speak to Church of Uganda Family TV.
Thank you so
it's my pleasure and gratitude to have hosted you and had this conversation with you this morning.
Thank you so much.
Well, that was it for this special talk show discussion. My name is John Jimmy Musimbi. Thank you for being part of the show, and until next time, goodbye.
This is Church of Uganda Family TV, enriching lives.